Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.
I still didn't understand racism. I just was like, wow, and that was the beginning of this need to understand. And so as a child, I was always reading. I was a voracious reader. I was a voracious writer. And my father built me a playhouse from scratch where I wrote my stories, my poems, my songs, and I think seeing my father come out every day, every night, every morning and painting wood and hammering nails and doing all of this. And he's very good putting it together before going to work made me realize that you really could make anything. You could make something out of nothing. It's possible. And this is where the possibility started to engender itself in my mind. I believe subconsciously that's why my company is called House of Deborah Jane, because I saw houses being built in front of me by my father.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Unlocking the Club, a place where we delve deep into the truth, where we delve into the spaces that we live in and the journeys that we navigate. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and I'm really excited to steer us in a little bit of a different direction today during a session of discovery and dialogue. Today's episode is going to touch on the theme of artistic expression and social impact. Both really resonate with anyone who's using their craft to challenge the status quo. Today, we're going to be joined by a phenomenal guest, an artist, a storyteller whose work spans film, music, and beyond, infusing every project with a mission to provoke thought and to inspire change. Together, we're actually going to discuss the power of art as a vehicle for social commentary, the challenges of being nuanced and bringing those stories to the mainstream audiences, and the personal journeys behind the public successes. We'll uncover what it means to be a creator in a space that's constantly evolving and how our guests' unique perspective shapes their work. So whether you're tuning in during your daily commute, fitting us into your workout, or winding down at home, crank up the volume and get ready for a compelling conversation. Let's unlock some wisdom together right here on Unlocking the Club as we are joined by special guest, Deborah Jane Burke.
Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Deborah Jane Burke is a dynamic filmmaker, writer, hip-hop recording artist, and producer. As the daughter of Guyanese immigrants who grew up as one of the only Black families in a predominantly white Orange County suburb, Deborah Jane found refuge in writing and hip-hop, igniting her passion for social justice and storytelling through music. Her journey led her to Stanford University, where she penned an award-winning hip-hop musical inspired by a childhood nightmare of being trapped in slavery. The play was later developed into a short film called Strange Fruit, the Hip-Hopera, and is now in the process of becoming a feature-length film about racial reconciliation. Deborah Jane enjoys a successful Hollywood career and has contributed to major networks such as Fox, TBS, BET, and PBS. Additionally, she founded the House of Deborah Jane Studio with a mission to disrupt the status quo, to amplify multicultural voices, and to effect spiritual and social change through dynamic TV, film, theater, and music, with a particular emphasis on musicals. Thanks for tuning in today as we share some food for thought in a soulful conversation with Deborah Jane Burke. Deborah Jane, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me on your show, Angela.
Well, thanks for joining us. Like just reading your bio and hearing about you through some mutual colleagues. We both are Chocolate Cardinal Stanford grads. And so there's that immediate connection. But the work that you were doing in film and music and the arts is really riveting to me in some powerful ways because it's delving with that social justice and the social change. And I'm curious, Deborah Jane, beyond the bio, which is phenomenal, who is Deborah Jane Burke? What are we missing on that bio? What made it to the cutting room floor, if you will, in that bio?
Well, first of all, 05 had to do it because I am a Cardinal, true and true. Second of all, yes, the cutting room floor, which is such a great term as a filmmaker, basically what was edited out. I would say Deborah Jane is a daughter of God, first of all, and a creative through and through. And I would describe myself as a musical revolutionary. My entire desire and focus and mission in life is, as you said, to make social impact, spiritual impact, affect change through the arts, through making dynamic television, film, music, theater, and social media and everything in between. That's what I'm about. And why? It's because I want to live this life on purpose.
Mm.
Want to I want my work to have impacted people to the point of action. I'm an igniter, I would say. And I think I get that from my parents. So that maybe is what you don't know from the bio is the impact of my parents on me. My parents are Guyanese immigrants. They came to America, moved us into Orange County, into the predominantly white suburb. And of course, they didn't know anything about that. They just got a good job and were pursuing the American dream. My father is a scientist. My mother is a professor and a doctor of nursing. And so the medical professionals pursuing the American dream. And so when we grew up in Tustin, we were the only Black family on the block. And my parents were coming from a place where they were the majority. And so to suddenly be considered minorities was a very jolting experience and strange if you also don't know African American culture or history, which they did. So I remember our first experience with white flight happened. My sister and I used to play with this next door neighbor, and she would read us stories when we were little kids. And then one day we were going to go read a story with her, and then she just magically wasn't there. And so I asked my mom what happened to her. Where's my friend? And my mom, I remember her looking so confused and struggling to explain this. But she just opted for the truth. So she said, her parents didn't want her to play with you anymore. And so they moved out. And I remember feeling in that instance, how strange. And they have such a nice house.
Like, what? Why wouldn't they want to play with me?
They wanted to move into their house. So I was like, this is when I discovered that racism was completely illogical. I still didn't understand racism. I just was like, wow, and that was the beginning of this need to understand. And so as a child, I was always reading. I was a voracious reader. I was a voracious writer. My father built me a playhouse from scratch where I wrote my stories, my poems, my songs, and I think seeing my father come out every day, every night, every morning and painting wood and hammering nails and doing all of this, and he's very good putting it together before going to work, made me realize that you really could make anything. You could make something out of nothing. It's possible. And this is where the possibility started to engender itself in my mind. I believe subconsciously that's why my company is called House of Deborah Jane, because I saw houses being built in front of me by my father. And that's where I wrote my first stories and really delved into writing. But I was a voracious reader, so I was always begging my mom if I could go to the library. And I mean, I was a very unique kid. I was like, Mom, can I go to the library? Please, please, can I go to the library?
She's like, that is a gift from an angel, right? I cannot have to entertain my child. She's asking me to go to the library. What a gift.
Amen. And so she kept me there. I would be there for hours. And I started reading slave narratives as a child at 12 years old. And it was because my surroundings gave me no understanding of African American culture at all. I was surrounded by a white neighborhood. I went to a predominantly white school. My parents were immigrants from Guyana. And so, but I was supposed to be this thing called African American. I was supposed to be this thing called Black. And people were expecting this certain Black behavior or Black identity, which I didn't know what that was. And so I was like, let me just read everything I can on anything Black. So I literally started with slave narratives. And I know that's not the beginning of African American history. I know that our history spans before that, and we come from the motherland. How could they ever, at that point, I'm just reading everything I can. And so I remember being enraptured, stunned, and terrified by what I was reading. Harriet Tubman very quickly became my hero and still is my hero. I was astonished that a 25-year-old woman could escape a plantation and follow the North Star with not even a map or a car and successfully get free, then go back and do it again. Yeah, do it again. I could not believe that. I was like, wow, what a woman. And I said, I want to be like her. I still want to be like her. So that's why I call myself a musical revolutionary. She's my hero. But I also was terrified by the brutality of chattel slavery in America. It was horrific. Yeah. And I realized that the horror of it is absolutely sanitized in our education systems. I certainly wasn't reading this in school. I was after school reading this. Mm-hmm. And so the truth of it is not really taught at all. It's so sanitized. But I'm like, oh no, this is horrific. And so I used to get nightmares. Night after night, I would wake up and I'd wake up screaming as if I had been transported back to 1807 and I was in the cotton fields. But I still had a modern mind. And I was like, what would I do? I really was like, what a conundrum. What would I do? Would I run away? So many bad things can happen to you. Or would I stay here for the rest of my life, slowly dying? I mean, the conundrum that African-American people were put in at that time was astronomical. You know, this is why I am completely convinced that Black people are superheroes. I'm Absolutely. Like, to survive that.
The resilience that has you show up generation after generation is remarkable.
Oh, it's remarkable. Yeah. I'm like, Superman should be a Black woman. That whole thing I was like, this is amazing. And so I gained this incredible reverence, admiration, inspiration for African-American people, but also gained this shock that the horror of what we went through happened in America, this very country, my country, 'tis of thee. I couldn't believe it. Yes. And so that actually haunted me with the nightmares, waking up screaming. That haunted me all the way to Stanford. When I went to Stanford, I actually met my first Black friend at Stanford. So that happened. I was like, oh.
What's this? What's going on? Yeah.
What is this? So, like there was a Black dorm, Ujima, and the Black house, and blackity everywhere. And so I was my Orange County self did not know what hit me, but I was enamored and stunned and a little scared and wanted to know if I'd be accepted and all of this and that. And so I had a passion. And so that passion, one of the ways the passion manifested was bringing this nightmare I had as a child to life. So at Stanford, with all its extraordinary diversity programs, and Jan Barker at the Black House, and everybody who was just amazing over there, in the theater department, there wasn't a lot of diversity, right? And I've always been a performance kid. I actually discovered performance as a child. I used to be in plays as a kid. I was dancing. I started a hip-hop dance team in high school. My father gave me Miseducation of Lauryn Hill for my 16th birthday, and that got me all into rap and hip-hop, and oh my gosh, and I was on that too. And so music, dance, theater, it was a big passion for me. When I got to Stanford, I sought to continue that. So I was on the hip-hop dance team there, DV8, and I was in Guyanese and all this
other things.
Yeah, I was in there. I was a freshman. I was everything. But I was like looking for Black stories or stories about people of color to be played in the dramatic space. They didn't really have it going on. Now I remember taking this class by Professor Harry Elam, who was amazing. The class was called Social Protest Drama. It taught hip hop theater. And that's where the intersection of all my passions came into being. social protests, justice-oriented narrative, storytelling, theater, hip hop, all in one thing. Social protest, hip
That's
hop.
amazing.
Yes.
Getting to this point of where you are. And I want
Yeah.
to pause because there's so many things that I want to unpack and ravel
Yeah.
in that story, right? And just the contour and the context of which you were able to share, there's so much beyond just someone's bio. And as I'm
Yeah.
listening to you, I'm reminded of one of my favorite TED Talks of all time, The Danger of a Single Story. So we can read somebody's bio, we can see their title, we can experience them for one moment in time and think that that's fully who they are. And what Deborah Jane just did a remarkable job of was being able to amplify that we're so much more complex than what you may see of us, believe in us, et cetera. And that's why it's important for us to continue to find platforms to share our story. And there's a few different themes that you shared that I want to unpack. You talked about being an immigrant and the contrast, if you will, between being an immigrant and African American, and that people don't understand. And we're having this conversation now heading into an election where they're saying, Kamala Harris isn't Black.
Right.
She isn't, right? Southeast Asian. And what we know for sure, no matter what our roots were, because we have certain melanin in our skin, we're classified as one monolith. And I think it's important for folks to be able to distinguish between the two of immigrants, of Black immigrants and African Americans, for sure. So there's that thing. You talked about white flight. You talked about being able to live with purpose and going beyond what you believe, as your father had echoed with you. You talked about being this musical revolutionary, which I appreciate you being able to juxtapose that with like your hero and why that is present in your life.
Yeah.
And you talked about the story of slavery and this really resonated with me. I watched a little bit of your 8-minute trailer.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, in the first 30 seconds, my heart was pounding in a very similar way to the experience you had when you started doing research on slavery. When I watched Roots as a child, and it was always on, it was one of the only shows that was on with Black people. And so, of course, your family was going to have you watch it. But it was dramatic. It was traumatic. I had nightmares watching that and seeing my ancestors and understanding what it was, and seeing my ancestors treated that way, shackled. And even in the 2-minute clip of the beginning of that trailer, like the feeling of trauma that I had, I'm curious, like, what is your hope for sharing this story?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and the impact it had on you. I definitely wanted to put the deep emotion that I felt through the characters. The mission of Strange Fruit is racial reconciliation. That's the ultimate mission. This is why we're doing it. So we're not just another slave movie, although I do not take away from any of the predecessors that came before me. I've learned from all of them, including Roots. But what we're doing, our focus is actually racial reconciliation. We're showing that in order to go forward, you have to go back. And so our main character is literally My Nightmare Come to Life. Our main character is a modern day African American woman. She's a whip smart, brilliant Wall Street executive. She's corporate. She's kind of like, she's corporate, trying to climb the corporate ladder and break into the white boys club and all of this. And she's trying to have her perfect little life and do all of that. She's completely disconnected from her roots and her culture when you first meet her. She's no interest in that. She doesn't see purpose of that. All she wants to do is be successful, Yale graduate, and marry the love of her life, a man named Todd, who happens to be white. So she is in an interracial relationship. The problem is that her whole relationship is haunted and is underneath a curse. So she actually has to go back in time to rescue her ancestor from a lynching, because the one who lynched her ancestor is the ancestor of her husband. And so she's having to actually go back in time in order to rescue and redo the past in order to have the future and the present that she wants. And her marriage, the life of her husband's on the line, everything's on the line. And so it's high stakes, radical adventure that she goes on, which she does for love. But in the process of it, she discovers who she really is too, and her connection to her ancestor and that sisterhood and that bond and her lineage and all of this. And she discovers, the story of African Americans in this country through which she is a part of. So it's a pretty radical tale, and we tell it through hip hop. We tell it through rap, song,
The
dance.
language we love, right?
Language.
Yes.
The language of revolution is hip hop. The language of the people is hip hop. And so we tell it through that. And that's because it's amazing, exciting, and innovative and new. We want to pioneer in this art form. But B, we also need to make the story palatable for the audiences. So, it might be hard for somebody to watch 12 Years a Slave. I think everyone should watch that. But sometimes it's a little challenging to watch a straight on drama about slavery, or how you felt when you're watching Roots. How do we deal with the trauma that might cause? With Strange Fruit, the Hip-Hopera, we are not sugarcoating anything. This isn't Gone with the Wind or something. We aren't sugarcoating anything.
There's no Disneyfication happening in Strange Fruit?
No,
Thank you.
no, there's no these aren't happy enslaved people. No. This is the story of an authenticity. However, the way we package it is through a language and a musicality that allows people to digest the story in an easier way. And I first discovered that at Stanford. So at Stanford, after taking the class by Professor Harry Elam, I knew what I had to do. I knew I needed to write a play. And I knew I needed to write a play that was my nightmare. And so I set about to doing it. It was my first, I was 20. I had never done this in my life. But I literally wrote the Hip-Hopera as a whole play, then set about to raise the money for it. Went from department to department, even to the president of the school, raising money. We raised $8,000. Got the cast. The cast was predominantly, I won like 3 grants too. The cast was predominantly Black. That was amazing because there was really no outlet for Black artists in theater at that point. And so then we put it on during Parents Weekend, which was awesome for marketing because we got parents, students, and everyone in between. The show was sold out. We had people coming twice, standing ovation. People were crying. And I remember the heart and soul of doing all this because I was also taking 20 units. So I remember everything it took to put this on. And, I remember taking a bow and people were applauding. My parents had flown in. And I remember God whispered in my ear, this is just the beginning. That's what I heard it clear as day. And I didn't know how we were going to move forward. But I knew that I had touched on the beginning of something extraordinary. And I knew after that, I needed to get into Hollywood some way, somehow. So
Make it happen. What did you learn about yourself in that process in college? Because that's a lot. As you said, you were taking 20 units as well, having to fundraise for this, having to market it, having to go door to door on campus to find people that were going to support, invest in you and your potential. What did you learn about yourself?
I learned about my magic. My magic is I'm able to bring diverse people, resources, and everything together to create something powerful. I can do that. The first time I did that was when I started my hip hop dance team in high school. So I learned in high school at 17 that I was a leader. I learned at 20 with Strange Fruit at Stanford. I learned that not only was I a storyteller, but I'm a storyteller who makes change. This set the whole, foundation for my whole career. This Stanford experience set the whole foundation. And then I learned that I'm a producer. I didn't know I was a producer. And so I was like, oh, this is producing, and just bringing all these people together. I learned that people want to be part of something great. And if you can convey the message and the mission and the story, communicate that effectively to a group of people so that they believe, then people will come together and do the most extraordinary things. And that's what happened. In fact, this is the DVD.
I love it.
At Stanford. Yeah, it's a DVD, so
do not throw out those DVD players, right? This is going to be entertainment gold one day.
Now, do you see this person right here?
Yeah. Is that,
you know who that is?
Is that Issa? Issa Rae, right?
She was
career.
Yeah, no, I mean, she launched her own career, but I was grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah.
She played one of the leads in our play. She played the ancestor or a modern girl.
Right. Well, for those of you that are listening on your podcast platform of choice, Deborah Jane just showed the cover of the DVD from Strange Fruit back in the day. For what year was this? The hip hop
2004.
2004. So 20 years ago. That
Years.
is phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We'll post this photo on social media so everyone can see it.
Oh yeah, I got the opportunity to direct her and got to first see this budding talent there. And then she went on and created a whole bunch of plays at Stanford and then of course launched the whole situation. So I'm glad I got to be a part of that. But that's where it all began. And yeah, that's like the story of the birth of Strange
Yeah.
Fruit.
Well, the birth of Strange Fruit also coincides with this thing that's echoing in my mind, this sense of Black excellence. And I
Yeah.
know in an Black immigrant family for sure, right? There's this standard of what you do and you should become. But there also is inside of this nomenclature that we've always grown up around Black excellence and our yearning desire to be excellent in whatever it is that we do. There's also a tax that comes with it and a toll. And so you're early in your career and in your journey, but you've done some really impressive and powerful things. Is there a toll that you've experienced? And if so, what has that been?
So I would say like this. I love Black excellence. I love having a standard of excellence. And my parents absolutely instilled that into us. I remember back when I was a kid, like in second grade, I had been getting B's, but then one day I got an A. And I said, you know what, if I can get A's, why would I ever get a B again? And so I went for like straight A's after that. And that sort of my parents had an expectation of that. They were not shocked when I did well. They would have been shocked if I didn't do well.
Right.
And so I think people rise up to a certain expectation of them. Now I'll tell you who was shocked, my teachers. Some of my teachers were shocked. Some of my teachers would call my parents and say, hey, your daughter got an A or your daughter's doing well. And my mom would be just so confused. She was like, why are you calling me? Like, do you call all the parents? Right. Or she does well. You know what I mean? And so I see this is important because, for Black people in this country, sometimes others have an expectation that they won't be excellent. And that expectation is detrimental because people live up to whatever expectation you have. Yep. And my parents had an expectation that you're excellent, period. And so whether it was being questioned by my teachers, or whether I was being bullied too for being a nerd, whether I was being bullied by peers, other folks who didn't think I should be studying, even some Black kids who didn't think I should be studying and things like this. All of that can be counteracted if you have a standard of excellence instilled in you at home.
Yes.
And that you live out for. So when it comes to what I produce, when it comes to my plays, when it comes to my company, I'm about everything being excellent, which is very important because now after breaking into Hollywood, which definitely started from the bottom, now we hear like Drake definitely started scrubbing floors, being a PA, doing whatever it took to get into Hollywood and then building from there, focusing on the writing. Eventually I went to USC. I got my master's in screenwriting. And after that, I launched my company. And so I expect to be able to compete with anybody, Black, white, or otherwise. I expect my work to be as excellent as anybody else, to get the same type of money, to get the same type of exposure. That's my expectation. And that's because that's what my parents implanted in me. And so I make entertainment. It's about Black people, but I make entertainment for everybody. Yeah. And so that's one. Now, the toll, to answer your question, the toll came when your identity becomes attached to accomplishment. That's where some of the toll and trauma I've experienced is, to where if I'm not achieving, am I still somebody? Am I still important? Am I still valuable? I have struggled with the idea of my value being attached to my achievement, to the point where I struggle if I'm not achieving something. And that is the toll. I think that it's very important that we understand that our value first comes from God. It doesn't come from anything we achieve. Before we achieve anything, we're valuable. We start off valuable. That's our birthright. And so that's that golden birthright that we have to stand on first. And then anything we're achieving come from that is coming from a place of I'm already valuable and I'm putting this value into the world as opposed to I'm trying to be valuable by what I put into it.
Exactly. And that's the racial reconciliation that you speak of, right? That has been the narrative in this particular country from really everybody. Like there's a way that we're socialized, regardless of what identity that you're in, that people of color are less than, that aren't
Mm.
capable of getting that A. So that when it happens, it's a surprise and not the norm. And
Um,
we have to start to disrupt that narrative that is out there as we are going through this racial reconciliation. And part of it is that we need to believe it ourselves first and foremost. So I
yeah,
appreciate you saying that it starts with us and understanding where these gifts are bestowed upon us, but understanding our value. And when you understand your value, we say all the time with my consulting company, business partner Stacy Parson and I, if you're working twice as hard, you need to ask for twice as much money
right,
and
right.
always ask for 100% of what you want 100% of the time. But if you have to know what your value is, if you aren't sure what your value is, then other people aren't going to see it, right? You have to be
Yeah,
able to walk in the room with that much confidence and know that there's some systems and some structures that may get in the way. But if
sure.
you acquiesce, then it's going to be so easy for others to acquiesce as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we're seeing that with Kamala Harris right now. She knows that she has what it takes to be a president, whether you're for her or not. I'm not talking about who politics. I'm talking about a person's
Capability.
capability and self-concept.
Yeah.
If she didn't have the self-concept that she was excellent and deserved this White House, she would never run.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have had the chutzpah to go there and face everybody who wants to deny her based on her gender and her race. Because literally, that's what they're talking about.
That's all they're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Her gender, not her policies. I can understand people having an issue with some policy or this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
But the attack line is her race and her gender,
Yeah.
not
Well,
even anything that has to do with capability.
exactly. And that she isn't Black enough, or she
Right. Because that's
she
true.
picks and chooses when she's Black. And I wanted to talk about this because you grew up in Orange County. We talked a little bit about this before the show. I grew up in Mountain Home, Idaho, a tiny town outside of Boise. Was one of very few people of color in my classes. Have a good friend, Beverly Oden, who was a guest on this show, who grew up in Orange County as well. Bev was an Olympian and played in the volleyball circuits growing up. And she talked about being adjacent to
Mhm.
both like the Black community, because there weren't many people of color in Orange County that she grew up or saw on a regular basis. And certainly she's not white, right? And so people let her know
Right.
on a regular basis. And so I'm wondering for you, you've talked a little bit about the white flight. You've talked a little bit about kids being taken away from the sandbox because their parents didn't think that, right, we were worthy to play with each other. But
Yeah.
did you ever have that experience of not being Black enough because
Yes.
you speak eloquently, or
Oh,
certainly not being
100%.
able to be in Black and white spaces?
Yeah. You speak, I was called whitewashed. I was called whitewashed, told that I speak white. I was definitely bullied by both Black people and white people. And so, obviously there wasn't a lot of Black people where I was at, but the few that were there, they did not feel I fit their idea of what it meant to be Black. And so I definitely had a bully, and she, she made fun of me and all the things. And it was very difficult for me because here I was also trying to figure out what it means to even be Black, and am I this and da 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 da. And of course, my parents are Caribbean, so they're coming from a different understanding of Blackness anyways. And so I was really struggling because I so wanted to be accepted by the very few Black people that were there, and I was not accepted. And so that hurt me as a kid. And then in my classes, which were predominantly white, I was in, AP classes, I was in the honors classes, I was in all of those. In those classes, I was usually the only Black person there. So in those classes, some kids felt like I shouldn't be there either. And so they thought I was too Black to be there. And so I remember when I got into Stanford, there was only two people from our school that got into Stanford. Our valedictorian didn't even get in. And I remember her crying about it, but it was me and another person. And I remember when that happened, there was all of this like whisper conversation throughout the school about how did I get in? And people were coming up with all these theories and this and that. And I remember one white classmate came up to me and was like, "Well, they only let you in to diversify the school, and this and that." And I was like, because for the last 4 years, I had been getting those A's. I had been
earning.
I had been earning. I had just because I didn't talk about it because I was so shy from being bullied.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I wasn't out here achieving. I had a 4.3 GPA. I was like out here like on a success track.
Yeah.
And so when he came and threw out his attack line that I was some kind of charity case, it really, really, it hurt. It hurt. And that's the type of attacks that are coming at Kamala,
Yeah.
So growing up in Orange County, I did feel not Black enough for the few Black kids, and I did feel too Black for the majority white kids.
Yeah.
And I remember even my teacher in journalism, I had written articles and all of this, and I remember he sat me down and he said, "You're not like the rest of them." And it was the first time I had gotten a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, that's a loaded compliment.
Right? I was like,
wait a minute.
because like I didn't know. Like, first of all, it didn't feel good, but it sounded like a compliment, but it didn't feel like a compliment.
Yeah.
And I was like, the rest of who? What is he talking about? And also just like, when I finally started understanding, he's saying, you're not like other Black people.
Yeah.
I was like, how insulting, how insulting. And so, just this sort of bifurcated experience where everybody was, not everybody, but so many people were projecting onto me what they thought I was and should be based on my color and what they thought Black was and this and that. Everyone's projecting their idea onto me. If I didn't have my own self-concept developed and being nurtured at home by my parents, I would have probably fallen into stereotypes, been afraid to achieve, been just confused, and I probably would have, struggled more in life. You know what I'm saying? Because even with the strength of having my family back up who I really was, I still was affected by that, by all that bullying. So this goes to show again how important it is to allow people to become who they really are instead of assigning them stereotypical identities that have nothing to do with them.
No, that's fantastic for you to share because I think this is a topic that we don't talk about enough. And I wasn't comfortable having this conversation till well beyond college when I just so happened to stumble into a conversation with some friends who had a very similar lived experience where they felt like they didn't fit in anywhere. They didn't fit in with the Black kids or people, maybe some Black students at Stanford who grew up in a different surrounding than Orange County or Boise, Idaho, felt differently about who you were, how you showed up, how you spoke, who you interacted with. And that was really painful when people were questioning whether you were Black enough because of your lived experience. And all I knew was to be authentic to me. And then the same thing, right? You knew you were adjacent to maybe people that you had grown up around and that they didn't really see you or hear you or appreciate you. There were some things about who you were authentically that were invisible to them. And that's a really lonely feeling that I think we need to discuss more because I have high expectations for all of us, people of color. We need to be more kind and give more grace to people that may have a different lived experience. And oftentimes we're quick to point the finger at somebody in a different identity and not really give each other grace that are in similar identities. And this is a conversation. What are your perspectives around this?
Woo, man. Well, first of all, I grew up in Orange County and I felt invisible.
Mm-hmm.
I felt I was still being myself, right? As best as I could. But I definitely felt invisible. And that invisibility has been something I've had to fight to break out of. Now, one of the ways that I fight to break out of it is through being a hip hop artist. I am also a hip hop recording artist. My hero is Lauryn Hill. I want to be able to make music like that has that kind of power and resonance like her. my moniker is retro raptress. Retro because I'm hella vintage, I'm hella pinup, that's my aesthetic, but I got bars. Okay. And so that's like who I am as a hip hop artist, as a hip hop recording artist. But I can't tell you how hard it was for me to accept my own self as a hip hop recording artist. It was harder for me. This is the hardest artistic persona I've had to accept about myself. It took me a while. Recorded and released my album 2024 on Spotify, 2023, 24 on Spotify. So I do have a whole album, and that helped me to really accept it. You know, what I do as a rapper. I'm writing raps all the time. I'm writing songs all the time and lyrics, and my mind thinks literally in lyrics and songs. And I've recorded like 7 songs, and I'm the flow and the cadence. I study rappers. I'm about the craft. I am really a lyricist. So I'm about the craft, but I still question myself if I was allowed to be an MC because I come from OC.
Yes.
I'm not straight out of Compton. I'm not from Brooklyn. I'm not, I have no street cred whatsoever. I lived in a suburb with a white picket fence. And so therefore I felt like, am I allowed to be a rapper? Because rap is so associated with a certain identity.
Yeah.
What I realized for me, what I want to do with rap is I want to push the envelope in this genre, giving space for different identities, different women's stories, different experiences.
Right.
Like I could make a rap out of a corporate office.
Right.
I can make a rap out of that experience.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the person I feel who did this the best was Lauryn Hill. She took her experience as a young mother, very spiritual, all her social justice activist, and she put that all in her rhymes. And so we're having this different persona. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of the other personas, but she gave me this window to something new, that this is what you can do.
The permission.
Yeah, and permission. And so I want to pioneer in hip hop and rap. But first I had to accept myself as an OC, as an MC, which was very challenging. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways I did that is I wrote a song called The OC. And it's literally about this experience. It's literally about being an MC from Orange County. And
I love it.
And what it takes. Like the first lines are, grew up in the magic kingdom, the tragic kingdom, no doubt. On the radio and Avril Lavigne in, white picket fence and manicured homes, our 17th in, tested. It was our Truman Show, perfect and pristine in.
What?
Only me on the block had me feeling invisible. Learn how to shrink so white people feel comfortable. Next door neighbors, they didn't want their kids to play with us, moved out their house rather than spend the day with us.
Those are some bars right there. Those are some bars. Yes.
Thank you. So, it's in me, and I'm manifesting it, but the acceptance of it, that took a while.
You are a true lyricist, right? They call it the raptress. Is that what?
Yeah, raptress.
The raptress.
Which is rapper / actress, which is something that Lauryn Hill to me.
Yes. Well, I get curious as we get ready to head in the break. So as you've unlocked that club for yourself, Deborah Jane, of getting to be okay and give yourself permission and the grace required to be the lyricist that you want to be, what advice would you have for others who are trying to do the same?
I would say, stand on the ground that was made just for you. If you want to put something incredible out in the world, it's gonna first start by you honoring what's inside of you. Our job is not to mimic other artists or other people who have done this or that. That's not our job. If you're an artist, your job is to put out in the world the unique, innovative, strange, creative message that you were meant to carry. And the thing that's important is only you can carry it, And when you accept that your uniqueness is a gift, that the ground you're standing on is hallowed ground, and that it is your job to manifest it into the world and bring that gift to the world, because that's a gift that God gave you to bring to the world. and then you have the courage to do it, that's when you'll be stepping into purpose. So it's accepting who you are, it's honoring who you are, it's valuing who you are, and then it's having the courage to manifest it and realizing that this is a gift that I'm bringing to the world that God put inside me.
That's a word. Those are some bars right there.
Bars.
Honor your unique gifts.
Follow it. Yeah.
Phenomenal advice for each and every one of us. Deborah Jane, you're one of one. I'm one of one. And for everyone out there in Unlocking the Club universe, you're one of one. Honor the hallowed ground in which you are walking this earth and find and honor your unique gifts. Those are some great words as we head into the back nine. That was incredibly insightful. And I'm sure our listeners are inspired, Deborah Jane, as I am by your journey, the wisdom that you shared. But I know that there's more. And so we're going to head to the back nine, which is kind of my favorite rapid fire segment where we get a little bit closer peek at the lighter, more personal side of our guests like Deborah Jane. So stick around. Right after the break, we'll be right back here on Unlocking the Club with Deborah Jane Burke on the back nine. Are you feeling stuck in your career or your business? Are you struggling to identify your unique talents and strengths? Well, I have some exciting news for you. I'm Angela Taylor, host of the Unlocking the Club podcast, with a really special opportunity for you to find more joy and more productivity in your professional and/or personal life. As a certified coach, I'm now certified in Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius. So my Unlocking Your Working Genius coaching package will help you uncover your working genius and unleash your full potential. In this special coaching engagement, we use a proven methodology to help you identify your natural talents and your areas of strength. And then we guide you in creating an action plan to leverage those strengths for greater success in your life, career, and/or business. So whether you're a business owner, an executive, or simply looking to advance your career, we can help you reach your full potential. Don't let your talents go untapped. Contact us today to schedule your Working Genius assessment and schedule your coaching sessions. Visit us at unlockingtheclub.com/coaching. Join us today and start unlocking your working genius for a brighter future. All right, welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm Angela Taylor, your host, and it's time for the back nine, where we get a little bit more personal and have some fun with some rapid fire questions, just to let you into the world of our incredible guest. Let's dive right in and see what new insights we can discover and uncover about Deborah Jane Burke. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, here we go. Deborah Jane, besides your own home, where is the place that you feel safest to be yourself?
With my mother.
Yes. Family.
Mama.
She helped you unlock, right? Get into the library.
My mama helped me unlock everything. When I was being bullied, it was my mom I ran to, and I read her my whole diary and all my tears. And she was like, just comforting me, and encouraging that soul that was trying to be developed. All my original stories that I wrote in my playhouse, I read them to my mom. And so it's my mom's belief in me that fortified that the identity that I am a writer, I am an artist, I do have something to say, and it's worth being listened to.
The moms out there, the aunties, right? All of those people that see you for you and are willing to help you bring that out in yourself. I love it. That's the same is true for my mother. Like, was always there no matter what, and to be able to have that relationship with her, I knew she saw more in myself than I saw in me.
Oh yeah.
It was that belief that really fueled my journey. So I love it.
My mom's one of the people that made me feel visible.
Made you feel visible.
Yeah.
Well, so when you were navigating this journey, like there's things that we encounter where we may have a little bit of trepidation. Was there something where early on in your journey you had trepidation that you no longer have?
I would say one of the most challenging experiences I had as we bring Strange Fruit as we work on it becoming a feature film. One of the challenging things I went through was having my script ripped apart basically by up-and-coming producer at that time. I thought it was going to be my big break. We had a table read, read the script, and that producer, who was also a Black woman, so I did not see this coming. She just ripped it apart. And that was the only time in my life I ever wanted to give up on Strange Fruit. And I started to question whether I had what it took, if I was good enough as a writer. And I've been writing for 20, 30 years or something at this point. And I have 2 writing degrees too. And I still was questioning if I was good enough because she'd struck at the heart. And that was very challenging. But I remember my pastor saying, Deborah, you are at a crossroads and you're either going to believe what this producer says about you or you're going to believe what God says about you. And God said, you're the only one who can do this. And so I started to get up and my mother said, you're Phoenix rising. I don't care what she says about you. You are going to do this. You're made to do this. And that identity was brought back. And then I was back on the horse. And so now we're working on bringing Strange Fruit to being a feature film. We're out here pitching in Hollywood. We're doing what it takes. Me and my producer doing what it takes. And with the prayer that it happens. With our short film already has won several film festival awards. So that is our proof of concept to bring this to life. Hollywood is not for the faint of heart. It's tough.
Yeah.
But that experience taught me after I overcame it and went through it with the help of so many friends and mother and pastor and God and everything, that taught me to be unstoppable and taught me that nobody can define or determine my destiny, no matter what title they have.
Yeah. Well, so important for you, leaders, folks that have so much talent. If you know what your North Star is, when any obstacle finds its way in your path, you're still going to move on. If you don't know what your North Star is, right, but that feedback would crush you. And so it's really important when you find your unique gift and you believe in it. Like sometimes the feedback is warranted and the feedback is helpful because as dreamers, we don't have the power of discernment.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have someone who's really good at feedback or discernment, it may help a good idea become a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that foundation and understanding who you are, then it may get you off that path. And you had that foundation, but you also have people in your universe, your pastor and your family that was able to reiterate that to you as well, which I think is really important. Well, as you've discovered, I can tell that you live authentically. What is something about yourself that you refuse to hide?
Wow. I refuse to hide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hide my faith. I'm not going to hide my faith. Even in Hollywood, as we go through this, I'm like, God did this with me, and I'm not shrinking for anybody.
Nice.
Because God is my best friend, and God is the reason that I even have been able to stick with this for 20 years.
Wow.
This is God.
I can't believe it's 20 years of the journey.
20 years of this journey. If it wasn't for God telling me that, giving me the prophecy and the promise that Strange Fruit would have the generational impact of her roots, if it wasn't for God pushing me when I fell down, when I was crying, when I had to rewrite it 200 times, when I'm being facetious, but I'm not. But when we're pitching, when doors are slammed in our face, when we get no's, when we get rejections, when we get this and that, when we get back up, if it wasn't for God, I would have given up.
Right.
But I don't because of the Lord.
Yeah, you haven't given up. And so what rings true for me about you, Deborah Jane, is in order to not have given up under the circumstances, you know what your superpower is.
Yeah.
What is that superpower?
Well, first of all, God. and second of all, I'm a visionary. And I am also tenacious. And I believe that if God gives me a vision, that it's meant to be visualized. So I can't stop until it's in theaters around the world.
Nice. Well, so you're not going to stop, and you were a storyteller. So when you think about this world that we're currently living in and all the spaces that you navigate from Stanford to Orange County to Hollywood and the entertainment scene, what is a story that needs to be told?
I think connecting back to these themes of people of color having stories told about them that are not stereotypical, unconventional stories of people of color that center people of color, where they are the hero, not the best friend, the protagonist. Those, I think, are very necessary. And Black people, Asian people, Latin people, Native American people, everybody needs to have those stories centering them where we're looking at it through their worldview, right? That's really, really important to me. So I would say that, and that's what my company, House of Deborah Jane Studios, that's what we strive to do. Our mission is to champion and elevate and amplify multicultural voices. We do it a lot through music-based and musicals. We specialize in that. But multicultural voices, giving them that platform, giving them that opportunity to tell their story their way. Also, innovation too. Let's not just recycle the same old stories all the time.
Yeah.
Let's be
Yeah.
creative.
Oh my goodness, please. Let's not just recycle the same old stories. We need some fresh perspective. For sure.
Let's do something new. Let's be innovative.
Yeah.
Let's trust that those stories matter and are meaningful too, and sort of shift the zeitgeist in that way. So, yeah.
Well, you can tell that this is where you see it all over your face when you're talking about these multicultural voices and the perspective that you want to be able to tell those stories. That is when you're at your best, in my eyes. But for you, when you're at your best, however you want to define being at your best, Deborah Jane, what's true for you in those moments?
At my best, I fully accept how loved I am. At my best, I'm standing in the identity of being the beloved of God, the beloved. And at my best, I am totally free. Free. I'm all about freedom. This is why I love Harriet. I'm about freedom. And I'm about me being free to be my fullest me. And I'm about engendering others, helping them to also be free. I would say I am a freedom fighter. I would say this is why I'm a musical revolutionary. I desire to set people free. And I desire for my work to be that catalyst for freedom.
All right. An igniter, musical revolutionary, a raptress, a lyricist. So what brings you joy?
Joy. I would say, circling around the same theme, it does bring me immense joy to help get somebody free and to help be that igniter to where they are now manifested and blossoming as their true, unique, unicorn self. That brings me an immense amount of joy. I could imagine that Harriet probably felt just so joyful when she crossed the line into the North with a group of people behind her who she brought
The umpteenth time.
the umpteen time. But those people were once afraid, terrified, and in shackles. And now they're about to live a life as free people in a new world, all because they had the courage to follow her and to go towards that North Star. That brings me extraordinary joy. If I could do that through media, then I'm living my truth purpose. That's my North Star.
Yeah, in order to be able to lead, you need to have people that are willing to follow.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think people will follow you in a lot of places. If you were braver, what's something you would do?
Okay. You know what? I am a brave girl, but I need to be even braver in love. I would let myself fall in love again and be swept off my feet.
Yes, that is another complete episode, right? Because as a Black woman, we are driven. We are so driven. And if we applied the same drive and tactics that we do in our day-to-day workplace,
Right? Like,
things might look different.
why am I out here? I'm like, Harriet Tubman, let's go, power to them people.
Exactly.
But when it comes to like, can you join a dating app? I'm like, no.
Exactly. The willingness to be vulnerable. And I'm going to encourage you to be vulnerable in all aspects of your life. And it's the time and the place, right? When you feel the time and the place is right. Well, the time and the place is right now, Deborah Jane, for you to let our listeners and viewers on YouTube know where they can find you and any special projects that you have that we should be on the lookout for.
Absolutely. So for our film, Strange Fruit, please visit www.strangefruithiphopera.com. storyteller.com. Our website. We're happy to have you join the conversation around racial reconciliation. We're also on Instagram at strangefruit_Hip-Hopera. So please follow us, like, share. We are trying to ignite a whole conversation around this film and what we're doing as we push towards the Hollywood dream. For me as a music artist, you can find me on Instagram as well at retro_raptress. And that's RAPTRESS. So I'm right there. If you want to take a listen to my album, it's called Who is Retro Raptress? And it's done in a 1940s film noir style, like a crime drama, where I am a revolutionary by day, or a revolutionary by night and a starlet by day. So very much that's the style of it. You can find that on Spotify, Who is Retro Raptress. You can also put my name in there, Deborah Jane, and you'll find me. So yeah, I would love for folks to tune into the work that I'm creating and be a part of the movement.
Amazing. Amazing. Make sure you check out all of those sites. Follow Deborah Jane on Instagram and social. And stay tuned. There are going to be a lot of projects, I have a feeling, that will be coming out. And we all are going to be better off for the opportunity to be able to witness your journey and to be able to view the stories that you were looking forward to telling. So thank you so much for being a guest on Unlocking the Club.
Absolutely. I'm so honored. Speaking of a lot of projects, basically we're hoping to be like the Tyler Perry of Orange County. So just
love it. Love it. Getting it done. Make it happen.
Making it happen. Thank you for letting me be a part of Unlocking the Club. This is an incredible interview. You're amazing. And this is an amazing platform and show. And I appreciate it. And I'm blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah Jane. Whew. As expected, so many dimes were dropped. And Deborah Jane definitely finished the back nine in style. Thanks for your wisdom and grace, Deborah Jane. I learned a lot from our conversation today, and I know our listeners truly did as well. I'm listening to this thing that's resonating and reverberating in my mind around your unique gifts, of honoring those unique gifts that have been bestowed upon you and trusting it and giving yourself grace as you navigate the journey. There's no linear path that we all have, but if you trust your instincts, you trust the gifts that you've been bestowed with, and you don't try to mimic somebody else, but you find out what's special about you, then you'll find a lot of joy, the joy that Deborah Jane demonstrated throughout our conversation. So grateful for Deborah Jane Burke for joining us here on Unlocking the Club. Again, a lot of nuggets were dropped. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. If you already have subscribed, tell a friend to subscribe to Unlocking the Club podcast on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube, where you can watch the videos of our episodes. Again, for Unlocking the Club, I'm your host, Angela Taylor. So grateful and thankful for all of you for tuning in and listening to our conversations as our guests unlock their truth, share their stories, and reclaim their power. Until next time, be well.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.